thank you everyone for joining us tonight. I am really pleased to introduce tonight's panelist, who's my colleague Nelda Bailey, who's the Director of Fraternity and Sorority Programs here at Tulane, and she's prepared great amount of information for you so that you will know how to support your student as they consider this possibility, and if they do, to go through this process and just know about how the community of fraternities and sororities operates at Tulane. So, Nelda, I'll turn things over to you. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Penny, for that warm welcome. As said earlier, this is fraternities and sororities and everything that you need to know. My hope is that I am hitting all of those big questions for you. I'm going to leave you with about 2 resources, and then, of course, there will be time for Q&A at the end of the presentation. As said earlier, my name is Nelda B. Bailey. I serve as the Director of Fraternity and Sorority Programs. I also serve as the advisor to our National Panhellenic Council and do a couple of more items, as you can see. My full staff also has 2 full-time staff members, both Neil and Marissa, who serve as advisors to our Panhellenic Council and our IFC Council, respectively. We also have 2 graduate assistants who help us do some of the things that gets done behind the scenes in our community. So by all means, if you call the phone or swing by the office and any one of these young ladies or gentlemen are present, please feel free to ask them any questions that you may have. And then this is probably my most important slide. This is my stay connected slide. If you have any questions, by all means, visit our website at greek.tulane.edu. You can also shoot us an email at greek@tulane.edu. I manage that email myself. You can call our front desk at 504-247-1542, or you can follow us on Instagram for any in the moment updates at greek.tulane. Pretty straightforward. The Greek and Tulane is kind of what the standard is across all of our messaging systems. The best thing that I can leave you with as well after our contact information is going to be the current. So on the left, you should see a QR code that should work for you to get access to this. If not, it will be available after the presentation. And then inside of this guide, it is 53 pages of great information. Some of this information will be included in this presentation. Some of it is like a highlight and community snapshot of who we are and what we do. We do talk about each governing council. We talk about each governing council's recruitment process. And then one of my favorite parts about this, as I continue to click through the document, at the very end, we know that y'all have questions about the individual chapters. So each chapter also has a featured page that they got to write and send us information for. And then it also includes their national founding, local founding, their spring term GPA from spring 25, as well as their own personal contact so that you can get to know one of our 25 chapters a little bit closer before the recruitment process may begin. The next piece for you is going to be common terms. We know that we use a lot of language that is kind of specific to our community. And so I put this slide on here just as a heads up. The big thing I do want to point out is that bid, you may hear me refer to bid day as well, but a bid is an invitation to join our community. So that is an invitation for membership to move forward. We do use PNM, which is short for potential new member or an aspirant, as anyone who is seeking membership within one of our communities. So you may hear me throw that out a little bit. And that is kind of what your student are right now. If they are looking to consider joining our community, we will categorize them in that category just so that we can make sure that we're getting them the right information. The other 2 things that I want to point out is something called intake. So if you have someone who is interested in one of our NPHG communities, we will talk about intake in a later slide. But that, for the sake of going into the beginning part of this presentation, is very similar to recruitment. And then we will also move forward with the conversation of active versus PNM. So PNM, I explained, an active is everyone post initiation. So after they have been initiated, in our world, they're going to be considered an active member of our organization. And you may also hear me say leader because our student leaders are also the ones who are leading this process, and all of them are going to be actives as well. So, mission and values. What is the office? What do we do? Why do we exist on Tulane's campus? Well, the mission of the Office of Fraternity and Sorority Programs is to enrich the capacities of our members of the fraternity and sorority community through opportunities and experiences that develop and maintain our core values of friendship, leadership, scholarship, service, and social responsibility. Our first value is friendship. So, most people, when they're looking at joining one of our organizations, friendship is going to be the number one reason why people are seeking this. This is also the same thing as sisterhood or brotherhood, but they're looking for people to share core values with, likeness with, and to experience this thing called life together as a whole. Friendship is one of the things that I think we really excel at because most of our membership will have the lifelong exponent. Right now, I'm super excited. I get to go back home for my homecoming this weekend, but I get to spend time with some of my sorority sisters from my undergrad experience, one of which lives full time in Alaska. But because of our sorority, we've been able to maintain that relationship outside of just our time in undergrad. And that's what this friendship is. Here during our college years, that looks like a couple of social events, membership activities. It may also look like bonding around core values or ideas, but that can develop into something way past their time here at Tulane. Our next value is leadership. So you did hear me say earlier that I refer to them as student leaders because most of the work that we're getting done in our organizations here are student led and they're just guided by my staff or alumni advisors who help them throughout this process. We do have different workshops and components that we do that we use to encourage and develop both their organizational leadership as well as their positional leadership for their members. That includes our president's retreats, that includes officer retreats, that also includes different resources or workshops that help them outside of just that position so that they can move forward. One of my favorite in this thing is going to be called Strengths or Clifton's Strengths Quest. And so we actually have a long assessment that they take, but they learn their top 5 strengths and how they show up in the world. And we highly encourage that they include that on their resumes or their LinkedIn profiles. And that shows up in their internships of how they can present themselves based off what we're giving them here during their time. Our next value is selfishly my favorite, and it is scholarship. So we want to make sure that students who are coming here are not only excelling, but they're graduating on time, they're hitting their metrics, and they're doing that in comfort and not in distress. We understand that Tulane students have a lot that they're juggling, but our community hopes to help aid them in their scholarship or in their scholastic achievements. On the screen, you will see that the OFSP or the Greek Community GPA has been higher than that compared to our non-affiliated, and that's because of our programs that we mentioned. Some of that is study groups, some of that is intention mentorships. So if you have similar majors or you're in similar colleges, we have hours requirements, and we also recognize our students when they have certain GPAs or they've hit the dean's list. Our next one is going to be service and philanthropy. So the service component of is what is the physical service that we're going back and doing? How are we actually leaving a better New Orleans for people after we've gone? On the right, you see that we have 2 photos with that, one of which is one of our Panhellenic chapters volunteering at Crawfish Monica downtown in New Orleans. There's also a fraternity chapter who is doing our Mardi Mess, which is actually a cleanup after Mardi Gras to help make sure that the city of New Orleans gets to be back to its beautiful self after the crazy that Mardi Gras can sometimes give us. The next thing that we always talk about as well is philanthropy. So, how are we taking not just our time, but also our talent and our treasure and giving that back to communities? Right now, our Full Greek community is gearing up for the Grace of at the Green Light, which is a local philanthropy designed for our unhoused population here in New Orleans. That big program kicks off or ends rather with our Greek group that is happening in November. But throughout the semester, we have had members who have had dedicated programs where they raise funds towards that. Just this week, we have another one that we will be doing. It's a give back night at a local venue where all those proceeds will go to the Grace at Greenlight. And then our last one is social responsibility. So we do understand that making the decisions to be a part of an organization such as a fraternity or sorority does have a high level of responsibility to that. And part of that is because our values and our founders have charged us to give back to our community. You've heard me say that a lot of how are we giving back to the local New Orleans? How are we making Tulane better? That's because our values and our founders put that charge on us. And that's why we have this as a key value as well. How are we making sure that the decisions we're doing leave a positive impact on society and not a negative one? How are the things that we're considering in our everyday practices helping others and helping our experience be better for the next day and the next generation? Now, Eligibility requirements are probably the number one thing that y'all are calling here for. So let me jump into that right now. Please understand that this is a detailed list of all of our eligibility requirements. This is just the baseline. So it may be a little bit higher depending on your chapter of choice, but this list can be found on our university's website, greek.tulane.edu. And once again, this is the baseline for all 25 of our chapters. The first one is that they have to be a full-time degree seeking Tulane student. So we know that we may have some students who are in special programs or they may be doing a part-time work. As it relates to joining our community, they have to be full-time degree seeking, and that is set by their college of choice that they're receiving their degree from. The second one is that they have to have earned at least 12 credit hours with a 2.5 prior to joining our community. Now, that looks a little different depending on if you have a different student at a different campus or not. But we are a deferred recruitment campus, which means that to join any of our fraternities or sororities, you have to have at least 12 credit hours and a 2.5. Now, I just said my favorite slide was scholarship. So I always encourage higher than a 2.5 GPA so that your student can be seen as competitive in their peers. But that 12-hour and 2.5 is the minimum, and that does not I'm sorry, I cannot think of the word. That does not go higher. So we do not round that up to a 2.4. It does not become a 2.5. Now, if there is a special thing where they're doing a program like a spring scholar or something like that, we do work with the Newcomb College to make those accommodations. And at least 6 of those 12 credit hours still have to be from something that Tulane College has accepted as credit. The next one is be in good standing with Tulane University. So we have a great relationship with our Office of Student Conduct, and we meet with them bi-weekly where we're making sure that our community is nice and safe. But we also meet with them to make sure that our students who are going through our process are eligible and have no violations within their standards for our community. That includes disciplinary probation, deferred suspensions, or any type of academic misconduct on their record. The next one is also not found responsible for a drug possession violation. Once again, making sure that they're in good standing and they have the clarity from the Office of Student Conduct and our campus partners to join our communities. We also require that they attend one of their council specific introductory sessions. So for our IFC community, that's going to be IFC Convocation. For MPHC, that is Meet the Greeks. And then for Panhellenic, that is Kickoff. I will give you the dates of all of those coming up when we get into the council breakdown. But that is required because we do a lot of education that is required by the state of Louisiana in order to join any of our communities during these introductory sessions. Last thing I put on here is that there are no exceptions to these eligibility requirements. We have a large amount of populations that are going through, so we're not able to make accommodations to that. Please know if your student is not able to join this coming spring or this fall, there's always the next semester. They do not have to join the very first semester that they're eligible. And that if they are looking to join either our IFC or our Panhellenic community, our registration closes on December 15th, and that is a hard close. We're not able to reopen that process after it closes. So the councils. Our first council is the Interfraternity Council, or the IFC, as you've heard me say earlier. And IFC is the governing body for our 12 social fraternities here at Tulane. IFC promotes interfraternalism through programs such as community-wide philanthropy events, facilitating educational workshops and public relationships workshops, and as well as coordinates the recruitment efforts for those organizations. The 12 member organizations are right here. I'm going to say their nicknames because their full names aren't here. Your son may say one or the two, but that is AE Pi, Beta, Delt, KA, KSIG, Phi Delt, Fiji, SAE, Sig Chi, ZBT, or Zeta. Interfraternity council recruitment looks a little different, and this slide I'm going to chat through a little bit, especially if you have a son on the call with me. We do have a deferred recruitment, which means that they cannot get their official bid until the spring because they have to have that 12 credit GPA. 12 credit and 2.5 GPA. That also means that they cannot begin any new member education or any pledge activities until the spring semester. However, our IFC does participate in something called IFC 365. We also call it free agency, where they can actually engage in active conversations with our members throughout the year. There is no time framing on that. There's no such thing as dirty rushing for our IFC council. If they are having conversations with young men right now, we highly encourage that. That really helps the student to understand what type of chapter they may be joining. They get to ask questions in a way that feels comfortable, and they get to have a conversation throughout the semester instead of that more condensed version that happens in the spring. There are multiple events that you see on the far left that is led by our IFC that coordinates all the recruitment events for them. Anyhow, we had one this week that was a quad day. It was yesterday on our Burger Family lawn. It was a great activity where young men can come out and meet all 12 of our chapters. They gave away free snowballs and got to answer any questions that people may have about the process. We have some more events that are happening throughout the rest of this month in both October and November, and that information is all public and on our website. If for whatever reason your son missed out in any of that, or they're studying abroad, or they're a transfer student, that is still a-okay. We will have some things in the spring for them to play catch up a little bit. But if your son is here, I highly encourage that he attend one or two of these things. The times are not listed because they change depending on the event. Some of them are in the evening, some of them are in the daytime to make accommodations for class schedules. But all of that information will be on the Tulane IFC social media. And then the important link right here is the registration link. Please know that your student will need to register themselves. It has a FERPA waiver on there that son has to do, as well as a couple of questions about fraternity and what does that mean for them. So please make sure that you have your son complete that. That will be live until December 15th. And there is a registration fee associated with that they may need your help on, but they will need to do the form themselves to get ready for that. Moving on to our next council, that is the National Panhellenic Council, or the NPHC. This is also lovingly referred to as the Divine Nine, or NPHC, and this is our historically Black Greek-led organizations here on our campus. The role of NPHC is to promote higher standards of scholarship, a greater degree of culture, and closer social fellowship, and a stronger spirit among its members. We have 4 member organizations right now at Tulane. We have Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternities Incorporated, or the Alphas. We have the AKAs. Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated is actually brand new to our community. They joined us this spring. And then we also have Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. As I said earlier, their process is actually called membership intake. They may call it intake or MIP as well, but this process is the process in which the members select, educate, and initiate its new members into their organizations. The thing that I think is very important to note here is that our NPHC council does not have a regimented schedule for their membership intake, which means that they may go an entire academic year without having membership intake, and that is not abnormal. They may have something in the fall, and they may not have something in the spring. Membership intake here is going to be coordinated based off their chapter, their needs in their chapter, and the interest that they believe that they currently have at the time pursuing membership intake. I've outlined a little bit of what intake may look like so that you can have an idea of this process, but please know that this process may not follow that line to line depending on the organization your student is looking at joining. It will start off with some type of a meeting. So it's going to be an interest meeting, an informational, or a formal rush. Those meetings are what the chapters use to determine whether or not they have a large enough interest pool to consider membership intake. They will ask questions of readiness. Do you have the 2.5? Do you have funds for your dues? Are you prepared for the membership intake process? That doesn't mean that they're having membership intake. I always put that there. This goal is to determine if there's enough interest to move forward with the process. If they do move forward, then there will be interview or some type of a selections. Sometimes this may happen together. There will be lessons, there will be some type of initiation, and then there will be a new member presentation. Another common question that I get is whether or not your student has to participate in the new member presentation. Please know that though it is a huge part of our tradition, that is not a requirement if your student absolutely doesn't want to. But please know that there are ways that we can make that comfortable for them, because this tradition does mean a lot within our community, and it's something that a lot of people love. For instance, I mentioned earlier that I was in a sorority and that I'm going back home for my homecoming. Some of my sorority sisters only ever stepped and strolled in their new member presentation, and they never participated in that tradition ever again. That is not abnormal either. The next thing is our membership intake. Please know that Meet the Greeks have had 2 sessions already. So we had 2 in September. Our last session is going to be January 21st. If your student attended one last academic year, they will need to attend this January 21st one if they did not go in September, because they have to go to the Meet the Greeks the academic year that they receive membership intake. If for whatever reason they're not able to have membership intake this semester and they did attend one of ours, they would have to go again next year in order to meet the requirements of our state. Candidates should also follow their Instagram accounts. This is a great way to see what programming is happening. I know right now we have a couple of weeks that are happening or just happened, and our chapters do consider program attendance in their eligibility requirements when selecting their members for membership intake. And then our last council is our Palantic Council or our Panhandle Council. This is the unifying, governing, and coordinating body of the National Palantic Conference groups here at Tulane. It acts as the links between our sororities, other campus organizations, administration by providing an enrichment to all members. We currently have 9 member organizations on our campus. Once again, I'm going to do the nicknames just in case your daughter is giving you a different name, but that is AD Pi, Phi, Chi O, Tri Delt, Theta, Kappa, Phi Mu, Pi Phi, and SDT. Primary recruitment and COB are going to be the two things and ways in how your daughter can join one of our organizations. Primary recruitment is the big thing that stresses people out. If you have heard of rush talk or any of that, that is primary recruitment. People used to call it rush. That is not the term anymore, but it may have been the term when you were joining. But primary recruitment is a 4-round mutual selection process that takes place here in the spring semester. There are a lot of changes this year compared to last year. So if you have a daughter already in our community, if you had a daughter joined at a different campus, or if you had a friend who joined us last year, there are significant changes from this spring of 2025 to this spring coming in spring 2026. The first thing is recruitment kickoff will be on Zoom. That is completely virtual. Your daughter does not need to be here on campus early for that. That is a virtual option where we're going to cover our Palantic community. I'll cover some of the same slides I just covered for you all, and then we'll cover some of the requirements that are placed on us by the law, as well as other things that they need to know about the process. So what is an RC? What is the outline? What is recruitment? Why do we do these things? All of that will be covered virtually. If for whatever reason they're not able to make that, we will have a secondary session that makeup will be eligible for the next day. So absolutely no worries. Friday, January 9th is going to be the first day that they're coming in person to do anything. That is also PNM move-in, so all students returning to our campus will move in on Friday, January 9th. At 6 p.m., they will meet to go over their open house round. Once again, this is drastically different than what we did this spring. Instead of them actually meeting all 9 chapters, we will have a completely virtual round, which means that they are submitting videos. I will chat about that in a minute. And then our chapters are also submitting videos. So at 6 p.m., they're going to come meet their RC groups for the first time, and they're going to watch all of these videos as they're learning what our 9 chapters are. Then we have weekend 1 and weekend 2. That is the best way for me to describe this setup for you because there is a split in our schedule this year. Weekend 1, we're going to cover philanthropy round and sisterhood round. This round is going to be more traditional based where they're actually going to the 9 sorority houses to meet our chapters to learn more about how that chapter has their philanthropy selected and lived through their experience, as well as what sisterhood means to them. They will go to their classes 12th through 16th as normal. And then on the 17th and on the 18th, they will come back for weekend 2, where they will have their preference round and their bid day round. Once again, this is drastically different. We will go in full detail on this for a kickoff for our students, but the goal is to make sure that they're still having the opportunity to meet all of our chapters while still making time for all of their academics. The second part of this is COB. So if your student is like, hey, that is a lot, that seems too much, I'm not sure if that's for me, I want something a little bit more quieter. Or if your student is an upperclassman transfer student, she or they will be eligible for something called continuous open bidding or COB, which is our informal recruitment process. Long story short, it is everything outside of primary recruitment. That is COB. And COB is active right now until primary recruitment starts in the spring semester. As I mentioned, there will be videos that your PNM has to do. So this information has been out for a little bit on our website. We have been sharing things out in Pibbles through our social media, but all of the PNMs, if they have gone to that registration link already, they know that they have to do a 3-minute video. And that video is their introduction. So they get to introduce themselves, their name, their hometown, their intended major, and then we have a couple of questions for them to answer. So once again, it is really important that your daughter is the one who does their registration because she has to do this video in order to submit that. The PNMs would then create a Venmo link and that would be added to their registration. This is completely new to our community, but please know that this is not new to the world of Palantic. We've had a lot of our peers do this process, and that's just because we're getting to the place where our community is outgrowing some of our spaces, and we want to make sure that we're making the best of our time. If there are any detailed questions about this, there are at least 4 different options right now of our executive board members exampling what this looks like by introducing themselves and answering some questions. There's also videos of how to submit that, including a walkthrough of the sign in upload steps. Alrighty. And then the most important part as well is going to be the registration link. So please know once again that there is a registration fee that they may ask you for, but it is your student's job to do their registration because they have to sign that FERPA waiver and answer some personal questions as well as upload their video for their registration. So, unrecognized groups. These are the things that I put on here because it may be important for our parents and our families to know this. And that is that groups of students that are not recognized may exist in the thing that we call underground or unrecognized. These groups do not report to the university at all. They do not report to any national fraternity or national organization. So if they're not reporting to Tulane and they're not reporting to a national organization, that means that they don't have any adult supervision or guidance and they do not carry any type of insurance or procedures or policies to help protect them. They are actually prohibited from affiliating with Tulane based off these things as well because we do have a code in our student code of conduct against this process. If your student is mentioning either of these groups, which are 828 and Sigma Phi Epsilon or Sig Ep, we strongly encourage that you discourage your student from participating in that organization. They are happy to go through our recruitment process, and I'm happy to answer any questions on a separate conversation about what those groups are. But those two groups are not affiliated with our campus, and they're not affiliated with any national body to provide protections, risk management, or guidance towards those organizations. Cost of memberships is another thing that I know a lot of people have questions about. Please know that our cost of memberships cover all of our programs, any type of events that I talked about earlier in the semester or the presentation at least. I just also mentioned risk management and insurance. Some of that is also covering some of that to make sure that they're protected. It may include meals, it may include transportations or swag for certain things, but please know that each organization do get to have their conversation and set that for themselves. Depending on your council, you may have a higher range at the beginning or the end of the semester. I will always tell you your first semester will always be your most expensive. And that is because the most of that money will be going to the national organization and not staying on the local level at all. But here is a range for you here. I will also note that there is a Greek fee that is placed by my office, and that is for my office to do some of these same things. Some of our programs, recognitions, community service opportunities, things of that nature for our community. And that is dependent based off the council that they join, which is why they're a little bit different in what the amount would be. That is per semester. So if your community is Panhellenic, you will have a $20 Greek fee per semester. If it's IFC, you may have a $45 Greek fee per semester, and that would be set onto your account. I will say for our Paladin community, we have had a lot of conversation about financial transparency there. So we are actually presenting all 9 individual chapter breakdowns in their recruitment guide that they will receive during recruitment and at kickoff. So we are trying to get more of that upend so that you know these ranges are information that we ask them at the beginning of the year, knowing that their national body may change their dues for a little bit or something may happen on the local level where they have to adjust their accommodations. Time commitment and balance is another thing that I know a lot of people ask questions about. And I will 100% say that your first semester is going to be the most chaotic or probably the biggest time train on you. And that is because you're doing a lot. We are asking our new members to go through our new member education process where they're learning years of history. They're learning what their organization looks like on our campus. They're learning what their chapter pieces are. They're learning their members and their fellow sisters and brothers. So that first semester does feel like a lot. After their first semester, though, it becomes based off what their things are. Some of our student leaders elevate up to chapter leadership, council leadership, so they have a bigger time constraint. Some of our student leaders stay on a local, I volunteer as needed basis. So depending on what they want after their first semester, it can look anywhere to an additional 2 to 3 hours per week, knowing that that can be based off their involvement. Their first semester, though, we're looking at closer to 3 hours to 5 hours per week because they're having their new member requirements on top of their standard requirements already placed for our members. As I mentioned earlier, academic commitments are always going to be prioritized and that they should come first. If your student has any other special needs, they need to communicate that with their chapter so that they can be excused or accommodated for whatever that may be. I have student athletes, we have student involvements, I have students who are abroad, we have students who work. All of those things can find a home as long as they're communicating that ahead of time. Housing is another question that we've gotten a little bit more recently. We do have 8 fraternity houses down our Broadway and our Audubon Street. We have 8 sorority houses that are on Broadway, Audubon, and Dimple. And each one of those fraternity and sorority houses have what we call an alumni house corporation. And that is a group of alumni members who once upon a time was in college, just like your student is right now. But they are actually serving as the guidance for that house management. So they're helping keep it safe. They're doing upkeep. They're making sure that their furniture is not broken, that they're meeting the code and taxes for the city. But they're also guiding their house manager, which is a student officer position, and supporting their needs through that community. For our residents, there are an HRL exemption. So we do have a few of our houses where you can get an exemption to the 3rd year live-on requirement in order to live in the fraternity or the sorority house. And that selection process is done a little bit later into the spring semester so that we can prepare for that before the fall semester begins. Hazing is the other piece under here. So when I talked about earlier about our legal requirements or our state requirements, that's because Louisiana law is one of our strictest states when it comes to our hazing law. And we do have to provide a lot of education to our members because we want to make sure that people are having a safe experience. For the sake of this, I broke this down into 3 categories because you may not be local, so you don't get to see them as much. But these type of things can kind of help you trigger. We may need to have a conversation, or I may need to reach out to Penny or Nelda and ask a question. The first one is going to be subtle hazing. So these are performing duties assigned to only new members. So our active members don't have to do it, but our new members have to do it. That is going to be a clear violation, but it may not strike as a big problem the first time or two that you hear that. Sleep deprivation or making people earn things also may not sound too bad the first time you hear it, but that is also a clear definition of hazing based off our standards, which is both the Louisiana law and the hazing on the code of conduct here at Tulane. The next category is harassment. So this is one that people may actually start to pick up and notice without prompting. That's personal servitude, that is lineups, that's calisthenics type of exercises. It might be pranks, forcing them to do weird things. All of that is still categorized as hazing. All of that should not be happening. And if reported, all of that will be clear violations of hazing, and we will move forward with an investigation to stop the behavior. The last one we put on here is violent. Violent are the ones that I don't have to explain too much. You can literally look at it and tell that it's a big problem. That's capturing or kidnapping. I put that on here knowing that that goes both ways. So if the new members or the PNMs are being forced to capture or kidnap their active or their new member educator, or vice versa, where the actives are trying to capture or kidnap the new members, both of those are huge violations. Both of them should be reported, and both of them are going to lead to us having a hazing investigation into that organization. But paddling, whipping, any type of forced consumption of food, beverages, any of that, if you're hearing any of that, seeing text messages, background noise as you're doing an update, all of that's going to be a violation, and we highly encourage that you report that information to us. As I said earlier, when I was saying that our hazing code of conduct, that is this code here. I am going to put in the middle piece just a little bit so that y'all can hear that and make sure that it's in the back of your brain for if the time ever arrives, hopefully never. But our acts of servitude and or behavior that humiliates, degrades, embarrasses, harasses, or ridicules an individual, or is otherwise harmful or potentially harmful to an individual's physical, emotional, or psychological well-being as an actual or an apparent condition for initial or continued affiliation with any group. So that is how our hazing definition is set in our code of conduct. And the piece that I'm going to highlight next is the piece that is really, really important. And that is regardless of either the lack of intent to cause harm by our active members or the hazed individual's own willingness to participate for our PNMs. I always stress to our PNMs that there is no consent in hazing. They can't say that they're okay with one thing and not the other. All of that is a violation of our code. All of that is going to be treated to the same level of investigation because that behavior should not be happening, nor is it welcome in our community here at Tulane. But our code is going to be based off our Louisiana law. And so those are pieces there in our law that does say that we have to do certain things. Some of that says that we have to provide hazing education. We have to have criminal penalties, which we do have in place by state law. And then it also says that we have to require information for seeking information. So I always stress that third one. Failing to report or seek assistance regarding hazing or reckless behavior is a violation of our law. And that goes both for our PNMs and our active. So we want them to move forward. We want them to report so that we can stop anything that should not be happening. So how do we do that? Here's how you report it. Our first one is going to be on our website. I have a couple of myths there. We have a couple of case scenarios if you want to read through that. Hazing prevention is a national one as well that we do use during our National Hazing Prevention Week. We also have Tulane's hazing text line. So that is a text line. It is not a telephone number that you can talk to someone. It is going to be during the operation hours, so 8:30 to 5 p.m. But they can report information, send us photos, send us screenshots so that we can start that investigation. We also have the Tulane.edu concerns report, which you may have heard in different ways, but that concerns report covers our entire campus. Once again, that is completely across our campus. So any type of behavior, including our hazing behavior, we highly encourage that you do that. Please know that that can be done anonymously. You don't have to put your name. You don't have to put a follow-up information if you don't want to. We only ask that you give us information that we can act on. I tell our students, you can't say it's going to happen tonight. We don't know what that means. But if you give us enough details for us to be able to identify the organization, the type of behavior, and some type of a timeline, we should be able to move forward with an investigation and stop that behavior almost immediately. And the last thing we have on here is the National Hazing Hotline. Just in case you're like, hey, Tulane is a great place. I don't know if I trust y'all all the way. I understand we have to earn your trust. While we're doing that, the National Hazing Hotline is there as well, and that they can link that with our TUPD here in the area to still stop the behavior and make sure that we're having safety, which is my biggest goal. So that is my full presentation. I know that I'm going to ask Penny to pop back up and as she's coming off mute. Here's our contact information again. My website is greek.tulane.edu. My email is greek@tulane.edu. And our main line is 504-247-1542. If you do have any questions, we highly encourage that you start putting those into the Q&A chat. And then we're going to get started.
Okay. So thank you so much, Nelda, for all that well organized and presented information. So we'll start going through some of the questions, and I'll pose those to Nelda, and we'll try to get through as many of these as we can. So the first question is, are P&M's GPAs considered in the rush recruitment bid process, or is it the case that as long as a P&M meets the minimum 2.5 for eligibility, there isn't any further consideration, like where their grade falls?
No, GPAs are going to be considered. So I will say, depending on the governing council, it looks a little different. I will go through all of them briefly. Our IFC community, we do have about 250 men who normally register for our IFC recruitment. So if you're a gentleman or your student wants to look very competitive, the higher the GPA is there, the better that makes them. Some of our chapters there do put weight on that, meaning that they get an extra point or they get an extra vote towards their membership selection or their bid preparation. Some of them may not have it if their connection is really strong, which is why we highly encourage that they're having those conversations this semester. For our MPHC community and our Panhellenic community, some of our chapters actually consider a 2.75 as their minimum. We put 2.5 because that is the minimum across our full community, but some of our chapters do require 2.75, which means that if your student has a 2.6, though they meet our eligibility requirements, they're not eligible for those organizations. In our Panhellenic community and in our MPHC community, I can tell you, because I do the grade checks, we have a lot of people who have well over a 3.0. So the higher your daughter GPA is, the higher your student GPA is, the better chance that they have. And some of our chapters do give an additional point for that. So they do become more competitive if they have a 4.0 or a 3.75 than someone who just has a 2.5.
Okay, next question. Is the Panhandle Open House on Friday, January 9th, an in-person or virtual event?
So the answer is both. If you have seen our website, that is probably a little confusing. It is technically an in-person. So they will be meeting with their RC group for the first time. Their RC group is their recruitment counselor that will be guiding them throughout this process. These are women who have chosen to disaffiliate so that they can help your student find their home. They will be meeting with their other peers who are going through that process. So they will be in a group with a group of other women who are also seeking it. So that part is in person. They're meeting in person. We're chatting about the app and the outline of what's happening. But the video is the option that they're going to watch, meaning what they're getting from the chapter is virtual. So technically, our open house round is a hybrid because both will be happening. They're meeting the chapter virtually, but they're meeting in person with everybody who are going through this process with them.
Okay. The next question is, the deadline for registration is in December, but is the video due at that time?
Yes. registration is going to be synced to their, I'm sorry, their video is synced to their registration. So when they register, there is a required section that says upload their video link. They won't be able to edit that link after December 15th. They won't be able to submit anything after December 15th. Registration and their video is tied together.
So I'll go to another question that's about the video. Please explain the goal of the video. Who's the audience? Can you share instructions to the women for this? What's the advice for that? And I think you did mention that there were some sort of tutorials about that, correct?
Yes. So the actual questions I don't have in my memory, so I don't want to say them wrong. The first requirement is an introductory. So we do ask for their name, hometown, intended major. There is one question that is required across all of our community. That is going to be received as their baseline question. And then the rest of the time, they get to choose what they want. We did give them two options if they want to answer that video. But the goal of this video is for your daughter, your student, to introduce themselves to the chapters because they don't have an opportunity to meet the chapters during this round. The video serves as that part. For the audience or the person who's receiving that, it is the active chapter. So all 9 chapters are going to be reviewing your daughter's video from December 15th until whenever they get back from the process. So some of our chapters are going to do it over winter break. Some of them are doing it in different ways. They all have a deadline, which is January 8th to have all of them watched. One of my chapters are watching all of them in one day. So they have different process that they're managing. But the audience is the 9 active chapters, and the goal is for your daughter, your student, to introduce themselves to that active chapter so that they can make an impression. As far as the instructions, all of that is in the registration link. So when they go to register, they will see that in there, the detailed questions that they have to do. We do have requirements. So the video pieces, the clear background, what they need to have, all of that is going to be in the registration. If she wants to practice ahead of that, we do have examples. Once again, our executive board has done some demo one just so they'll see the vibe and they'll see what we mean by clear background. There's also an option that has the list laid out. So they do not have to hire anyone for this video. Can easily be done just on a cell phone. But they do talk about what those dynamics should be and how the camera should be facing. All of that is on the website. All of that is on their Instagram account, and all of that is in the registration link that they would get when they register.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So another question is, why are the IFC Greek fees higher?
So our IFC Greek fees manage their trash as well. So our fraternity community does have social events in their house. Our Hellenic groups do not have social events in their house. And so part of that is that we do manage their pickups. The city of New Orleans only allows them 1 pickup per week. Based off the trash from their social events, we will have a big resident issue if we left just the trash out and about. So we do 2 additional pickups. So if they are 25, that means that their chapter does not have a facility. If they are 45, their chapter has a facility, so they're using those additional pickups. That is the key difference. The other things have been making it a little bit more balanced based off the needs of our community.
And when you said an issue with the residents, and you mean the neighbors, that since those houses are right there with other families and single people and just regular residents of New Orleans, they're in a neighborhood. So preserving that goodwill with the neighbors is an important part of what they're learning as well.
Yeah, so part of that is that. Part of that is meeting like the HOA requirements because the trash can't be left out for so long.
Uh-huh.
I think the city pickup is on Wednesday. Most of their social events are Thursday through the weekend. So if they're having an event on Thursday, the next pickup wouldn't be until Wednesday. So imagine rats or any of that. That'll be a problem. It's an eyesore to leave it out. Meanwhile, my office helps provide support. So we do have an additional pickup on Sunday and we do an additional pickup depending on where they are, either Tuesday or Thursday as well.
Okay, thank you. Is the January 8th the required kickoff for Hellenic, or is that some other meeting?
That is the required kickoff for them.
Okay. Are recommendation letters for sororities required or recommended?
So recommendation letters are not required, which is why I did not include it in the presentation. We actually do not facilitate the collection of that as an office either. If you would like to have someone do that, we do have directions on our website that you can follow, but you should have the active member submit that through the national website. So if we have Alpha Beta Gamma, that is the organization, Alpha Beta Gamma has a portal where members can submit that through the Alpha Beta Gamma and it goes to our chapters. We highly encourage that you all try to get that done by December, but please know that that is not a requirement for our community. If your student does not have a letter of recommendation, that does not put them in a different place. But once again, it can be considered as lanyap, which here in Louisiana just means a little extra to make them a little bit more competitive, but it is not required at all.
Does legacy status matter?
So legacy status depends on our chapters. Some of our chapters do honor a different set of legacy status. Some of them may have updated what is considered a legacy. That is going to be an organizational question that we highly encourage they ask one by one. In their registration, we do have the status where they can put it. So they can list that there are a legacy of these organizations that is from both male and female perspective. They can list that information out. But as far as the basic requirements, does not change their eligibility at all.
Do you have the time for the Zoom on January 8th?
6 p.m.
Okay.
Central Standard Time.
Okay. One person asked, can you explain the point system?
The point system is just a system that chapters do internally. So for our Panhellenic community, I would give that just for size. We have over 900 students who are registered for Panhellenic recruitment. So they have to create some type of a system to help them understand how they're going into those 900. Not all of them have a point system. Please understand that I am using this across the full community, but it is just an idea of if you're having imaginary statuses, what makes you a little bit more competitive. Having a higher GPA will make you a little bit more competitive than someone who doesn't. That does not mean that our chapters have point systems. We have no confirmation that our chapters have point systems. This is a system that I am using to help you all understand what competitiveness may look like when you have a large amount of students going through this process. Some of our students do have a merit system. So some of them say that you have to have these four things. And if you don't have these four things, then you're not eligible. For instance, if you have to have a 2.5, then you have to have a 2.5. But that doesn't make you any more or less competitive. If you don't have these things, it's just making you look more competitive for that list. Ideally, when students are asking me how do they show up, this is the system that I use. Our chapters do not use this language. Let me clarify that.
Okay. So one person has said that their son is not connecting well with the fraternities he's interested in at this point. He is feeling like he's not being treated well. The parents said that they told him to recalibrate and go elsewhere, but he thinks that's too late. What would you say is the truth? Where should his attention be at this point? Or
So by recalibrate, is that like having them consider other student
I
orals
think
maybe?
so. I think, yeah.
Okay.
Because
Honestly, at this point, I still think that they have time. We're not at the point that it feels like the cutoff has happened, this imaginary cutoff where the full list is all done. Once again, we participate in IFC 365, so there's always an interest there. If I knew the listed organization, that might make me give you a better idea because some of our organizations are just a little bit more standardized in how they move forward with their process. So some of their calendars may make it a little bit easier for me to gauge where they may be. In full honesty, though, at this point, I still think that they are still eligible. I won't say anything against that. What I would encourage that you all do to help them feel a little bit more comfortable at each one of those IFC events that I listed, our IFC executive board will be there. That includes our IFC president, our recruitment chair, and his assistant, as well as a couple of other members. I think right now we have 8 of the 12 organizations on our councils. So he can definitely have a conversations with one of the IFC exec board members and get a more student peer-to-peer piece of how to move forward with that. That's why they're there. They have a lot of conversations with students of like, hey, what is missing and or how do I help change the narrative of where we are? All 12 chapters will be there. They send their recruitment chairs or who may be eligible, available depending on the schedule. But our IFC council does represent our community as well, and they can be able to help him try to figure out how to break that ice if he's having a hard time.
great advice. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So with the video for the sorority potential new members, is
Mhm.
that considered the first round and girls could get cut or not invited to sororities based on the video? Or is that sort of like a baseline that they have in place for everybody?
So the videos is considered the first round. That is why it's called open house round. So it is
Okay.
the first round of selections. They will be watching all 9 videos from the active chapter. So each 9 chapters will have a video that the PNMs will watch together. Then the PNMs will make selections off those 9 videos. While that is happening, our chapters also have access to the 900 plus videos from our PNMs, and they will make selections based off those videos. So yes, selections will be being made based off the videos from both parties after the end of the first round, which is open house.
Um, so here's another question about videos. I want to confirm that the sorority video is attached via Vimeo and not on the campus director site where the PNM answers other questions.
No, so let me clarify that. That is incorrect. So on their campus director's registration, there will be a question that says upload or copy a link to your video. The Vimeo account is a system that they can use to get that link. So they just recorded the video on their phone. They don't have a link, they just have a video. Vimeo is the system where they can take the video from their phone, upload it to Vimeo. Vimeo gives them a shareable link that is open and accessible for our community to watch. They copy that link to Campus Director. So Vimeo is just a tool to give them a shareable link to put onto the Campus Director. The video link needs to be in their Campus Director and their registration by December 15th.
Okay. Are all the types of hazing that you mentioned illegal at Tulane? I've heard that the fraternities secretly beat up their members. What would you say to that?
All versions of hazing is illegal. So every single thing that I put on that link, knowing that that list is not complete at all because students may be creative, all of that is going to be seen as illegal. All of that is going to be seen as a violation of hazing code of conduct. All of that, I highly encourage that you report so that we can stop that behavior because it should not be happening. There is no such thing as safe. There's no such thing as soft. There's no such thing as gentle or okay. And definitely, there is no legal hazing here at Tulane or in the state of Louisiana. If you have any concerns, I highly encourage that you do a concerns report. You can call my office, you can call the Office of Student Conduct, you can call TUPD. But anything that was on that list is a sure no. If you have anything that's not on that list, we can have a conversation. But chances are, if you feel that is a no, do a concerns report so that we can investigate that behavior.
So I think that the answer to this is it could vary from year to year, but a question is what percentage of women will receive a bid during the January recruitment? Do some people go through the process and not get a bid from any sorority? If so, how many people does this happen to?
Yes, it does vary year to year. I will say it really depends on the student and why they choose to remove themselves from the process. Please know that they can choose to remove themselves from the process at any moment. One of the things I will say though is that our percentage is relatively low. I don't have the numbers right now on the top of my head, but I know 2 years ago we were at 24%. That was less than that, which means that over 80% of our community who started the process, who registered at least, let me say that, who registered was moving forward and receiving a bid. Eligibility requirements will take people out. Schedule conflicts will take people out. Then there's a few people who just don't like the option that they have and they decide to come back through COB. Please know that that percentage is relatively low, especially compared to just my other experience and my other 5 campuses. One thing that we did add this year and last year was a secondary pool, which helps our upperclassmen actually have a better and higher success rate for matching. And so our status actually went down. So it is even lower than what the 24% was because of the secondary pool. I just don't remember the actual percent right now.
Okay. This question is what about professional fraternities? Do they apply in the spring? Can they do this in addition to being in the Greek letter sororities?
Yes, so I have 25 chapters that I listed across those 3 councils. Your student can join any one of those. And so they cannot join multiple of the ones that are on my pages, but they can join any one of those. What we don't encourage is that they then also try to join another organization that same semester. Their processes may be similar, so that might be too big of a time constraint on them at one time. But at a different semester, they can join any professional, any academic, any service based organization that was not listed. In fact, we highly encourage it. It's a great way for them to continue their networks, elevate our community and the Tulane community as a whole.
Okay. When does IFC recruitment begin? When do the students need to be back on campus after the winter break?
So IFC recruitment is happening right now. So there are events that are happening throughout the month of October and November that your student can attend and should attend. The formal recruitment begins in January. I think it's the 20th. I gave you all a lot of information, so I don't want to give you all the wrong dates, but it was in the slides earlier and it's on our website. That formal recruitment process will be a last ditch chance for anyone who missed it. It will also be a great opportunity for our spring scholars and our transfer students to meet our chapters for the first time. What was the second? Oh, the second piece was, does anyone have to move in early? No. All three councils will not have to move in early this year moving forward. So IFC, Panhellenic, or NPHC, no one is moving in early on campus.
Um, so that next question is, are the dorms open for move-in on January 8th or is 9th the first available move-in date?
January 9th is the first available move-in day.
Okay. Is a resume submitted anywhere? This person said they didn't see that on the campus director registration site. Did they
It
need
is
a resume?
It is an optional document. It is not a required one. So at the bottom of it, it will say like if they want to upload any additional pieces, it's listed as an option if they want to. If they don't want to, they don't have to.
Is there any way for the women to move back earlier on January 8th, just in case there's any travel issues like delayed flights with being back on the 9th since the open house round starts that day?
So after we've had a chance to close out our registration and verify eligibility, we will send out emails to all of our students who are registered. That would include what their eligibility status would be. That will also include next steps for our process. One of that will include a conflict schedule form. So if a student has a conflict issue, we understand that life happens and we will try our best to accommodate that. They will need to complete that form if there is any type of delay, but they will be moving back in on the 9th.
Do you happen to know at this point if AKA or Delta will have an intake this semester or spring 2026?
At this point, I can say yes for both.
Okay. Um, let's see. With the people who are submitting the things for the sorority recruitment, are they able to fill out the registration at one point and return later to upload the video, or do they need to like be prepared to do all of those steps at once?
No, they're not able to do that. So based off how the cookies and the cache system works within the technology, I do not know anything beyond that. That is the answer that they tell me from our tech support. Our instructions actually encourage that they go through and put the answers in a Word doc or in a note so that they can come back and submit everything all at once. If they try to do that, they may have a missed registration. And unfortunately, we have had people who were not eligible because it did not see process all the way through. It just stored in their cookies and it never actually came to our side and they ended up missing our registration. So to avoid that, we highly encourage a Google Doc, Word doc, or notes where they can put all the information in one thing and then copy and paste into their registration to submit in one sitting.
I think you've addressed this already, but I'll read this question out. We've heard that there's a soft or quote unquote dirty rush recruitment currently going on, and it's thought most fraternities already know who they are offering bids to. If a potential recruit is not getting invitations to events now, should they consider themselves a long shot for not getting a bid or during the true recruitment process next semester? So I think you've addressed most of that, but did you hear anything there, Nelda, that you think needs to be clarified?
So the one thing I will say once again is that our chapters and our FC cannot do something called dirty rushing. That is very much a Panhellenic term by itself. They have something called IFC 365. So they can be having conversations throughout the entire year as soon as they interact with anyone and have that idea of whether or not they want to give a bid to them or not. The one piece that I will acknowledge is that that's why I say earlier, depending on the organization, we have some chapters who may historically have a smaller pledge class, which means that they may be getting closer to that number. But that doesn't mean that they have a confirmed bid list because we actually do collect their list for them at the end of the fall and at the start of the spring semester. And we have had conversations right now that I'm proud to say have changed. At the beginning, Penny and I were chatting about a spotlight that I did for Neil, who is my IFC advisor. We're actually growing a lot of that changes. So that might be what you're thinking of that historically they've only accepted X amount of members. A lot of that is rumors. None of that is true. That information has changed consistently. The average pledge class has increased by 5 since I've been here. So yes, there is still a chance There should still be having conversations. What may also be happening in full transparency, we're gearing up for Halloween. So I know a lot of people are probably excited for the holidays that are coming up. In New Orleans, our students celebrate Halloween very big. It is a time that we do a lot of risk management and harm reductions. I fully just believe that our IFC men are focusing on getting their events submitted and reviewed by my office for Halloween. I don't think that they are stopped their recruitment efforts at all, because we had an event yesterday. All 12 were there. All 12 are still chatting with people, still collecting names. Their shifting is probably just shifting. I mean, their focus is probably just shifting to the social event of Halloween. And then it's going to gear back up in November when they have a next deadline.
So we're right at 7 or 7:01. Do you have a moment to take two more questions that I think might be good ones to just try to finish up with right now?
Yeah, I can take those
Nelda?
two.
Okay, so this next question, when does Tulane post grades so we'll know, if the students met the GPA requirement?
I don't have that date. It's on my calendar and I'm sharing my screen so I
Yeah.
can go
And
off
I'm
screen.
sorry, I don't have it off the top of my head either, but it is on the academic calendar. And so if you go to the Tulane website and just use the search function and put academic calendar, you'll look for the one that is for fall 25, and you'll see the dates there for when grades have to be submitted after final exams. And those might come in piecemeal, as professors who had earlier finals in the finals process, they might get things finished, but there is a deadline by which all professors have to submit the students' grades. So the students will know that in December. Um, you can also search, it lives on the office of the university registrar. So if you just use the search function or you go to the registrar, look for academic calendar, you would find it there. And I'll put that in the follow-up email. I'll put that date out there so you'll know. The other question that we want to just get done now is, should female students be having informal discussions with sororities right now, like coffees, or is that not allowed?
So that is where we're having the real conversations. So there is something called PNMs with Penhel. So that is something that our recruitment assistant and our vice president of recruitment for Pan Atlantic are having and hosting. We had one in October that was meet all nine chapter. I'm sorry, one in September that was meet all nine chapters. We have one in October where we're going to talk about the video. So people who have questions about how to do the video, the links and all of that. We have one in November that is dedicated specifically to financial literacy and financial transparency. So dues, scholarships, opportunities around those pieces, those are open to the public. Anyone who's interested in joining any one of our chapters should attend one of those events. Those are going to be hosted midday. They don't have to be there the whole time frame, but if they can swing by, that'll be great. Our chapters are also having open Panhellenic events. So Panhellenic recruitment events geared towards having you register. Any type of philanthropy event that is open to the public, that should be happening. Your students should not be having one-on-one conversations with chapters. That is where dirty Russian becomes a violation of our recruitment rules, and that chapter will be held accountable for violations of the rules.
And one parent offered that the grades are due for all students on December 15th. So this person looked that up or had that information available. So we thank you for that. So, what we will do is I'll look through the questions that we didn't get to answer. I'll consult with Nelda and we'll get answers to those. So, give us another day or so to get that email back to everybody, and we'll try to address those questions that we couldn't do live here in the webinar. Or you can email to Nelda's office to ask those questions. But I think if you'll give us a couple of days, then we'll try to get that as complete as possible when we give this information back to you in an email. So we do appreciate your time that you've spent with us and your interest in just following along and learning about this process so you can support your student as they consider or go through this. And we're really grateful for your interest. And Nelda, I'm so grateful also for your preparation, your thorough answers, and your willingness to share all of this with our family community. So I always tell you that if you have content-specific questions about, this topic, then reach out to the office that has presented the information. And so that information is here on this last slide. It'll be in the email as well. And then if you have just general comments about the webinar programs in general, or you would like to suggest a different topic that we might address in a future family webinar, then please email me at families@tulane.edu. A lot of what we offer that parents appreciate has been suggested by parents in the past, and you all kind of help us continuously improve what we offer in terms of our communication and resources for families. And we consider you an important part of our Tulane community, and we're really happy for your participation tonight.